everyone feeling exponential? Does everyone feel as if now, after a day and a half, we might be able to solve trillion-dollar problems with compute and all this stuff, yeah? Feeling like that? Good. Does everyone feel that maybe we've got to work harder to actually get some of these technologies into the hands of people today? Yeah. A cultural question. What is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything? Good. And has everyone got their Star Wars tickets? I'm very pleased to be amongst such a cultured audience. So, this time last year, I talked a little bit about how Singularity University inspired me, after I first attended back in 2012, to solve a trillion-dollar problem. Using exponential advances in machine learning, the revolution in biosensors, and really kind of trying to embrace a lot of the changes happening in healthcare, we set about to create a little company, originally called Jointly Health, to literally solve a trillion-dollar problem, the problem of complex chronic disease, and to trying to eliminate all preventable hospitalization by making sense of sensor data. We originally called that project Jointly Health. We got too many calls for medical marijuana and hip replacements, so we had to change the name to Centrion last year, but it's the same thing. You'll be pleased to know a year on that this little SU Labs company is doing some great things and really leading the way, so thank you, SU. But today, I'm not going to be talking about Centrion. I'm actually going to be talking about people who are really gaining benefit from such advances in technology today, including people like this gentleman, Darth Vader, who, just to remind those who were here last year and to explain, is a paragon of how exponentially advancing technologies can help people. Let me explain. Darth Vader had 100% burns, multiple polytrauma, whoops, no arms and no legs, significant psychological issues, some minor stuff, and of course, and yet, with the benefit of a load of biosensors and machine learning, he was able to run the galaxy and live life to the full. But it's not the future I'm going to be talking about today. I'm actually going to be talking about a little place off the east coast of New York a few years ago. It's called England. And about this person, who was a patient of ours, who came to us for advice. She'd been having trouble for some time getting pregnant. They'd established that her husband didn't have any problems with his fertility or his technique. So we suggested that perhaps she go to an expert specialist in the area who decided to do some scans. They did some MRIs, and they noticed some peculiar things on the MRI. One of the people who reported on it said it looked like tuberculosis of the womb. Said it probably wasn't important, hadn't heard of tuberculosis of the womb for about 100 years, but it led me to think, well, why on earth are you getting such a range of opinions and really nothing particularly substantial in the reports? And looking at what's happened in the last 3 years is quite extraordinary. We've got a ton of companies now who are doing some really good stuff. We've got companies here today, like Inlytic, doing massive backdata analytics on lots of scans, companies in Israel like Zebra, a little project that I started as well over here in California, where we took 40,000 lung scans and chucked it through pretty well some off-the-shelf software, and we're pretty well 300% better than the best radiologists within about 4 weeks of starting the project. It also got me thinking about the fact that MRI scanning should be a hell of a lot cheaper and available to everybody. So I spun up another little project called Clarismo, the investor of which is here in the audience, so thank you very much, where for $200, if you are an ex-med attendee, you can get a whole body scan and compare your liver or brain to the size of Brad Pitt. back to Marge. So she had these scans, and the sort of suggested course of action was she go straight for IVF, because there wasn't anything really structurally wrong. But her specialist had this kind of hunch. And he said, look, I'm actually going to do something I'm probably going to get in trouble for. I'm going to do a hysteroscopy, which is where you look inside the womb, because I just don't have a really good feeling about this. Anyway, he did get in trouble for doing this, because it was particularly off protocol. And he came back with an answer. And he said to this lady, the reason why you cannot get pregnant is because you have cancer throughout the entire lining of your womb. We'll have to do an immediate operation in order to save your life. You'll be infertile, and you'll have menopause and all the rest of it. This was a bad day at the office. So she called up our team. We are not cancer specialists, but we do help advise people. And we said, OK, well, what's more important? Having an operation like this immediately, or your fertility? And fertility was very, very important to her. So she actually got advice from about 6 people in about 2 hours as a result of me pulling out a piece of exponentially advancing technology from my pocket, a mobile phone, and calling up quite a few people, including some of the people in the audience. And she also got some advice from a mathematician who helped calculate what the risk of stimulating her ovaries would be before the operation, and for the cancer to spread from the womb to other places. With the power of data and some real intelligence behind it, she made a logical decision, negotiated with her surgeons, who are quite furious, and she decided to go through a cycle of IVF without a monitoring cycle, and she managed to get 6 embryos frozen, all of which were genetically tested and were looking good, and had the hope that maybe she might just be able to have a child after the operation through surrogacy. She had the operation, and during the operation, they also had to remove her ovary because it wasn't looking good. The result of that was a diagnosis of both ovarian and endometrial cancer that they had thought had spread. So they planned another operation to remove her peritoneal lining, strip all of her lymph nodes out, and basically leave her with some pretty serious side effects. We suggested that perhaps she have both those tumors genetically sequenced, which we did. We also grew them, the tumors, in some mouse models, not particularly expensively. And it turns out that this cancer hadn't spread. They were 2 genetically completely separate tumors. So she had 2 stage 1 primaries, which were curable. So instead of having this massive radical operation, she could actually have a much less serious operation, no chemotherapy, and cure. Anyway, that's what she did, and that really did change her outlook. About 2 years later, she found a surrogate mother who very, very kindly carried the last 2 remaining, after unfreezing, embryos for 9 months in between. She got this photograph that she sent me. And then, about 1.5 years ago, this happened. Her daughter, Sienna, was born. And I remember that day very well, because I was actually giving my talk about solving trillion-dollar problems using data at Wired Health in London, which is a great show to go to as well. And I remember getting off stage and receiving a text message from her, which basically says, "Get the hell down here, your daughter's about to be born." I've got an apology to make. I was lying to you. She isn't my patient. She is, in fact, my wife, and Sienna is my daughter. And And just to thank them for their bravery in allowing me to use their story, I'd just like to bring them on stage. Say hello. Say hi, Exponential Medicine. Say hello. Thank you. Thank you so much. These guys are a living example of how if you use data correctly and make the right decisions from it, we can really transform the outcomes of individuals today. It's an oft-quoted phrase here, one that I learned, which is the William Gibson phrase that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. And these guys are a living example of the fact that we have a problem. And our problem is that an awful lot of what we're doing and building today is going to take an awful long time to get into everybody's hands. There are lots of pioneers, inventors, and visionaries here whose I can only dream to really live in their shadow. But I think it's important for all of us who have visions of solving trillion-dollar problems, impacting 1 billion lives over the next 10 years, and so on and so forth, to really think and focus about how we can get some of these advances into the hands of doctors, into the lives of patients, and onto the balance sheet of those who are paying for this healthcare, not tomorrow, not in 10 years, but today. Thank you very much.